judgment. The conference chamber aboard the orbital station Zenith Prime stretched vast and circular, its transparent dome revealing the swirling colors of the Andromeda Nebula beyond. Commander Elena Ross stood at the center of the chamber, her navy blue uniform pressed sharp, her posture straight despite the weight of representing 8 billion souls. She was 42 years old, with dark hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that had seen too many sleepless nights preparing for this moment. Around her, in ascending tiers that reached toward the dome, sat the representatives of the Galactic Assembly. They were beings of incredible diversity. The Etheron delegation glowed with soft bioluminescence, their translucent forms shifting like living glass. The Thorcan ambassador, a massive creature covered in crystalline plates, sat motionless as a mountain. The insectoid Vexcari clicked and chittered among themselves, their multifaceted eyes reflecting the chamber's light in kaleidoscopic patterns. And there, in the highest tier, sat the Krellian delegation, reptilian beings whose scaled skin shimmered with iridescent green and gold, their cold yellow eyes fixed on Elena with something between amusement and contempt. The chamber speaker system hummed to life, translating the words of Chancellor Voreth, a Thorcan whose voice rumbled like distant thunder. The Assembly recognizes Commander Elena Ross of the species called humanity. You may present your petition. Elena touched the holographic control on her wrist. Above her, a three-dimensional image of Earth materialized, spinning slowly, showing the blue oceans and green continents that humanity called home. Honorable members of the Galactic Assembly, she began, her voice steady and clear. I come before you today to request protective membership status for humanity and recognition of our sovereign territory within the Sol system. We are a young species, yes. We achieved faster-than-light travel only 28 years ago. But in that time, we have shown ourselves to be capable, peaceful, and eager to contribute to the greater galactic community. She gestured, and the hologram shifted to show images of human achievements. Space stations orbiting Mars. Colonies on the moons of Jupiter. Research facilities dedicated to medicine, physics, and xenobiology. We have much to offer. Our scientists have made breakthroughs in quantum mechanics and biological research. Our artists have created works that celebrate not just humanity, but the diversity of all conscious life. Our philosophers seek to understand our place in this vast cosmos. We ask only for the chance to grow, to learn, and to stand as equals among the civilized worlds. A sound rippled through the chamber. It took Elena a moment to recognize it as laughter. Not warm or welcoming, but dismissive and cruel. The Krellian senior delegate rose from his seat, his movements deliberate and predatory. High Commander Jathic was ancient by any standard, his scales bearing the scars of countless battles. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority. The Assembly recognizes High Commander Jathic of the Krellian Empire. Thank you, Chancellor. Jathic's teeth showed in what might have been a smile. I have listened to the human's words with great interest. She speaks of art and philosophy, of dreams and aspirations. How charming. How naive. He gestured with a clawed hand and a different hologram appeared, showing Earth from space. What the human fails to mention is that her species is violent, territorial, and resource-hungry. They have spent their entire history waging war upon themselves. Even now, with the stars within their reach, they build weapons instead of schools, warships instead of hospitals. Elena's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. Jathic continued, his voice growing stronger. The Krellian Empire has filed a formal territorial claim on the Sol system under Article 47 of the Galactic Charter. This system lies within our sphere of expansion, and we have the right to exploit its resources. The humans arrived at galactic civilization too late. The claim is valid and we intend to enforce it. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Elena's heart pounded, but she forced herself to speak calmly. High Commander, with respect, humanity has occupied the Sol system for over 200,000 years. We did not know of the Assembly's existence until recently, but that does not negate our right to our home. Rights? Jathic's laughter was harsh. Rights are earned through strength, human. Your species has no strength. You have a handful of primitive ships, barely capable of reaching your neighboring stars. The Krellian Empire commands 12,000 warships, each one more powerful than your entire fleet combined. You have no allies, no technology worth mentioning, and no claim that supersedes ours. He turned to address the Assembly. I call for an immediate vote to approve the Krellian territorial claim and authorize our harvest of the Sol system. Chancellor Voretha's voice boomed through the chamber. The motion has been called. As per Assembly protocol, we will hear arguments for and against before voting. He looked down at Elena. Commander Ross, You may speak in defense of your petition. Elena took a breath. She had prepared for this moment, rehearsed every word, every argument. But standing here, facing the reality of galactic politics, she understood that logic and morality would not save her people. These beings had seen countless species rise and fall. They operated on principles of power and precedent, not compassion. Still, she had to try. Members of the Assembly, she said, her voice ringing clear. What you decide today will define not just the fate of humanity, but the character of this assembly itself. If you allow the Krellian claim, you declare that might makes right. You declare that any species with sufficient military strength can simply take what they want from those who are weaker. You create a galaxy where fear and violence are the only currencies that matter. She looked up at the tiers of delegates. The Krellian Empire calls us violent. Yes, we have fought wars. Yes, we have struggled and made mistakes. But we have also learned. We have built a unified world government for the first time in our history. We have turned our weapons toward defense, not conquest. We are trying to become better than we were. Her voice grew harder. Can the Krellians say the same? How many species have they conquered? How many worlds have they stripped bare? How many civilizations have vanished beneath their harvest fleets? Jathik's eyes narrowed dangerously, but Elena pressed on. You have a choice today. You can allow this injustice, this theft, this genocide. Or you can stand for the principles that this assembly claims to represent. Justice. Protection of sovereign species. The right of all conscious beings to exist without fear of annihilation. The chamber fell silent. Elena felt the weight of thousands of eyes upon her. Finally, Chancellor Voreth spoke. The Assembly will now vote on the Krellian territorial claim over the Sol system. Those in favor of approving the claim, signify by activation of your voting crystal. Lights began to appear throughout the chamber. Blue crystals glowing on the consoles of delegates who supported the claim. Elena watched as the count rose. 10 votes. 20. 30. The Thorkin delegation voted in favor. The Vexcari abstained. The Etherons voted against, their soft voices murmuring protests that were quickly drowned out. When the final count was displayed, the result was clear. 48 in favor, 3 against, 12 abstentions. The motion had passed. The Krellian territorial claim is hereby approved, Chancellor Voreth announced. Humanity is granted 6 months to evacuate any colonial installations outside Earth itself. After that period, the Krellian Empire may proceed with resource extraction operations. This session is concluded. Elena stood frozen as the delegates began to file out. Some avoided her gaze. Others looked at her with what might have been pity. Jathik approached, his steps heavy and deliberate. He looked down at her with those cold yellow eyes. You spoke well, Commander. Eloquently, even. But words do not stop harvest fleets. 6 months. Use them wisely. Evacuate your people from Mars, from your orbital stations, from everywhere except Earth itself. When my ships arrive, anyone remaining in our territory will be removed by force. Elena met his gaze without flinching. You are making a mistake, High Commander. Am I? His mouth parts clicked in amusement. You have no fleet. You have no weapons that can threaten us. You have nothing but defiant words. I have heard such words before from dozens of species. None of them exist anymore. Then you have not been listening carefully enough. Elena's voice was quiet but firm. Humanity did not survive 200,000 years by giving up when things looked hopeless. We did not climb to the top of our food chain by accepting defeat. We did not reach the stars by surrendering to fear. She stepped closer, and for a moment, Jathik seemed almost surprised by her boldness. You think you know us because you have studied our broadcasts and analyzed our ships. But you do not know what we are capable of when we are truly threatened. You do not know what measures we have prepared, what plans we have made, what weapons we have developed in secret. Jathik's amusement faded slightly. Are you threatening the Krellian Empire, Commander? I am warning you. Elena's eyes were hard as steel. Turn away now while you still can. Find another system to harvest. Leave humanity alone. Because if you come to Earth, if you threaten our home and our families and our children, you will discover that we are not prey. We are not resources to be collected. We are survivors, fighters, and we will defend our world with everything we have. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then Jathik turned away, his laughter echoing through the empty chamber. 6 months, human. Prepare your farewells to the stars. Elena watched him go. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up with her. She activated her communication device. Ross to the Defiant. Prepare for immediate departure. The voice of Captain Marcus Chen responded instantly. Understood, Commander. Should I send the message? Elena looked out through the dome at the stars, at the vast and beautiful and utterly indifferent cosmos. Somewhere out there, 8 billion people were waiting to hear if they would live or die. She thought of her daughter, safe in the colony on Luna, studying to become a doctor. She thought of all the children like her, dreaming of futures among the stars. Send it, she said quietly. Authorization code Phoenix 1 Alpha. Full implementation of Project Sentinel. There was a pause. Commander, that's a full military mobilization. That's everything. I know what it is, Captain. Send the message. Yes, ma'am. Transmitting now. The message traveled faster than light, racing across the void toward Earth. It was encoded, compressed, and encrypted with quantum keys that only a handful of people could decode. But its meaning was simple and terrible. The assembly had failed. The Krellians were coming. It was time for humanity to show its teeth. On Earth, in a bunker deep beneath the Pyrenees Mountains, a man named Director James Okafor received the message. He was 70 years old, his hair completely white, his face lined with decades of carrying the heaviest secret in human history. He looked at the message for a long time, then pressed a single button on his console. Across the globe, hidden facilities began to wake. In orbit around Earth, camouflaged among the thousands of satellites and debris, weapons platforms activated. In the asteroid belt, what appeared to be mining operations revealed their true purpose. On the dark side of Luna, massive doors began to open, releasing ships that had been built in absolute secrecy over 28 years. Project Sentinel was humanity's insurance policy. When the first FTL drive had been tested, when humanity had first looked at the galaxy and wondered what was out there, some people had asked a different question. What if what's out there wants to hurt us? What if we are not welcomed? What if we need to fight? Those people had been called paranoid. They had been dismissed as warmongers and fearmongers. But they had been given funding anyway, quietly, secretly, just in case. And they had used that funding well. 473 warships emerged from their hidden berths. They were not exploration vessels or cargo haulers. They were instruments of war designed with one purpose: to defend Earth against any threat. Their weapons were based on technologies that had been deemed too dangerous for civilian use. Their armor incorporated materials that had cost fortunes to manufacture. Their crews had trained in secret for years, waiting for a call they hoped would never come. The call had come. Admiral Sarah Komu sat in the command center of the EDF Retribution, humanity's first and largest dreadnought. She watched as the fleet assembled, as captains reported ready status, as weapon systems powered up and targeting computers calculated firing solutions for enemies that had not yet arrived. She opened a channel to all ships. This is Admiral Komu to all Sentinel fleet vessels. You all know why we are here. You all know what is coming. The Krellian Empire believes we are weak. They believe we will surrender our colonies without a fight. They believe Earth will simply wait for them to arrive and strip our world bare. She paused, letting her words sink in. They are wrong. We are not our ancestors who fought with sticks and stones. We are not primitives who cower before superior force. We are humanity, and we have spent our entire existence proving that we do not give up. Not when the odds are against us. Not when defeat seems certain. Not ever. Her voice grew stronger. The Krellians want a harvest. We are going to give them a war. When they arrive at the Sol system, they will find us ready. They will find us armed. They will find us absolutely unwilling to let them take even 1 meter of our territory without paying for it in blood. Across the fleet, on 473 ships, crews listened and understood. They had families on Earth. They had loved ones in the colonies. They had everything to fight for. All ships, battle formation Delta 7. We are going to make the Krellians regret ever hearing the name humanity. Como out. The Krellian harvest fleet arrived at the Sol system exactly 6 months later. They came in force, confident and unstoppable. 2,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering, equipped with weapons that could crack planets. They emerged from hyperspace at the system's edge and immediately began scanning for targets. What they found confused them. The colonies on Mars were still inhabited. The orbital stations were still operational. The mining operations in the asteroid belt were still active. It was as if the humans had simply ignored the assembly's order to evacuate. High Commander Jathik stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Endless Hunger, and felt a flicker of annoyance. The humans had been given 6 months to accept their fate with dignity. Instead they chose defiance. It would make the harvest more difficult, but the result would be the same. Communications broadcast to all human installations. This is your final warning. Evacuate immediately, or you will be removed by force. The response came within seconds. It was Elena Ross, her face appearing on every screen throughout the Krellian fleet. Hi Commander Jothic, this is Commander Elena Ross of Earth Defense Command. You were warned. You chose not to listen. Now you will learn what humanity does when threatened. Jothic's eyes widened as space around his fleet suddenly lit up with weapons fire. The asteroid belt, which his sensors had shown as nothing but rock and ice, exploded with activity. Hundreds of weapons platforms revealed themselves, firing missiles and energy beams and kinetic projectiles at speeds that should not have been possible. The mining ships transformed, their hulls opening to reveal hidden weapon bays. And from behind the moon, from Mars' orbit, from hiding places throughout the system, the Sentinel fleet emerged. The battle for Earth had begun. The reckoning. The first volley of human weapons struck the Krellian fleet with devastating precision. High Commander Jothic watched in disbelief as 3 of his destroyer-class vessels simply vanished in blossoms of nuclear fire. The asteroid belt, which his sensors had classified as inert mining operations, had transformed into a death trap. What appeared to be simple mining equipment revealed itself as electromagnetic railguns capable of accelerating projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed. The rocks themselves had been hollowed out and converted into weapons platforms, their exteriors carefully maintained to appear natural while their interiors housed targeting systems and ammunition stores built over decades of secret preparation. Evasive maneuvers. Jothic roared, his claws gripping the command console. All ships return fire. Destroy those platforms. The Krellian fleet responded with overwhelming force. Energy weapons carved through space, vaporizing asteroids and platforms alike. Missiles streaked toward human positions, their warheads designed to shatter moons. But for every weapons platform the Krellians destroyed, 2 more seemed to open fire. The humans had turned their entire asteroid belt into a fortress, and the Krellians had flown directly into its killing field. Jothic's tactical officer, a young Krellian named Vorshan, analyzed the incoming data with growing alarm. Commander, we are detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. The humans have over 400 warships, not the 50 our intelligence suggested. And their weapons technology is far more advanced than our projections indicated. Impossible, Jothic hissed. They have had FTL capability for less than 3 decades. They cannot have built such a fleet. Nevertheless, Commander, the ships are real. And they are moving to engage. On the tactical display, red icons representing human vessels spread across the system in coordinated attack patterns. They moved with a precision that spoke of extensive training and battle planning. These were not cargo ships hastily converted for war. These were purpose-built instruments of destruction, and they were closing in from multiple vectors. The EDF Retribution led the charge, Admiral Komu's voice steady as she coordinated the human fleet's assault. Target their command carriers first. I want their communications disrupted. Wing Alpha engage their left flank. Wing Beta maintain pressure on their forward elements. Wing Gamma, you are cleared for Operation Sledgehammer. Understood, Admiral, came the response from Captain Chin aboard the destroyer Swift Vengeance. Gamma Wing breaking formation now. Gamma Wing consisted of 40 fast attack vessels, smaller than the Krellian destroyers but significantly more maneuverable. They had been specifically designed for hit-and-run tactics, inspired by ancient human naval warfare adapted for the 3-dimensional battlefield of space. They accelerated toward the Krellian fleet at speeds that pushed their crews to the limits of their inertial dampeners, weaving through incoming fire with calculated precision. When they reached optimal range, they unleashed their primary weapons, focused plasma lances that burned through shields and armor with terrifying efficiency. 3 Krellian cruisers found themselves overwhelmed as Gamma Wing concentrated fire on their shield generators. The shields flickered and failed, and follow-up strikes punched through hull plating, decompressing entire sections and killing hundreds of crew members in seconds. The human ships didn't stay to finish the job. They had already changed vectors, racing away before the Krellian point defense systems could track them effectively. Jothic watched his fleet taking damage and felt something he had not experienced in over a century of warfare: uncertainty. The humans were supposed to be primitives, barely spacefaring, armed with weapons that would bounce harmlessly off Krellian shields. Instead, they fought with a ferocity and competence that challenged his most experienced battle groups. Deploy the Talon formations, he ordered. Surround their capital ships and crush them. The Krellian fleet began to reorganize, attempting to use their superior numbers to envelope the human forces. It was a tactic that had worked against countless species, using sheer mass to overwhelm defensive positions. But Admiral Komu had anticipated this move. She had studied every recorded battle the Krellians had fought, every tactic they employed, every strategic pattern they favored. Humanity's survival depended on knowing their enemy better than the enemy knew themselves. All wings execute maneuver Prometheus, Komu commanded. The human fleet suddenly scattered, breaking into dozens of smaller groups that dove deeper into the asteroid field. The Krellians followed, confident that they were driving their prey into a trap of their own making. They were wrong. As the Krellian ships pushed into the belt, hunting human vessels among the rocks, the second phase of humanity's defense activated. What the Krellians had dismissed as debris fields were actually carefully positioned mine clusters. Thousands of autonomous weapons awakened, using magnetic and gravitic sensors to identify their targets. They didn't explode immediately. Instead, they attached themselves to Krellian hulls like parasites, drilling through armor with diamond-tipped boring lasers before detonating their fusion cores directly inside enemy vessels. The results were catastrophic. 12 Krellian destroyers died in simultaneous internal explosions, their hulls rupturing from within as nuclear fire consumed their crews and systems. Jothik's tactical display turned into a nightmare of red warning indicators, ship after ship reporting critical damage or complete destruction. "Pull back," he commanded, his voice sharp with barely controlled rage. "Reform at coordinates 773 Mark IV. All ships withdraw from the asteroid field immediately." But extracting his fleet from the trap proved harder than entering it. Human attack wings harassed the Krellian retreat, striking at damaged vessels and finishing off stragglers. The Swift Vengeance and her sister ships moved like wolves among the enemy formation, identifying wounded prey and eliminating them with ruthless efficiency. Captain Chin watched his tactical display with grim satisfaction as another Krellian cruiser broke apart under concentrated fire. Target destroyed. Acquiring next hostile. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Sarah Park, fed targeting data to the main plasma lance. "Commander, we are detecting a massive energy buildup from the human lunar facilities." Jothik saw it too. On the dark side of Earth's moon, concealed installations were powering up. Energy readings spiked to levels that seemed impossible for a species of humanity's supposed technological level. Then the installations fired. What emerged from those hidden lunar bases were not conventional weapons. They were experimental particle beam projectors, based on technologies that human physicists had developed in secret over decades. The beams themselves were invisible until they struck their targets, but their effects were unmistakable. They didn't simply punch through shields and armor. They disrupted the fundamental atomic bonds that held matter together, causing enemy ships to disintegrate at a molecular level. 5 Krellian capital ships died in the first salvo. Their massive hulls simply came apart, fragmenting into component atoms that dispersed into the void like smoke. The crews didn't even have time to scream. They were there one moment and gone the next, their consciousnesses extinguished faster than their nervous systems could process the fact of their deaths. "By the ancestors," Vorshan whispered, his scales paling with shock. "What are those weapons?" "Humanity's final warning," Jothik said quietly. He had underestimated these creatures, dismissed them as primitives playing at civilization. He was paying for that arrogance with the lives of his warriors. Around him, his command crew worked frantically to coordinate a defense against weapons and tactics they had never encountered before. The Krellian Empire had conquered 300 species over 15,000 years of expansion. None of them had ever fought back like this. Admiral Komu watched the battle unfold from the Retribution's command center. Her fleet had taken losses, 37 ships destroyed and another 68 damaged, but they had bloodied the Krellians badly. Conservative estimates suggested the enemy had lost over 300 vessels, with hundreds more damaged. It was time to press the advantage. All ships converge on enemy command carrier. Target designation Omega-1. Prepare for full Alpha strike. The Endless Hunger, Jothik's flagship, was the largest vessel in the Krellian fleet, a mobile fortress bristling with weapons and protected by shields that could withstand the output of a medium star. It had survived 1,000 battles, served as the command center for the conquest of entire civilizations. Now it found itself the focus of humanity's fury. Every human ship capable of firing turned their weapons toward the massive carrier. Plasma lances, railguns, missile batteries, and experimental beam weapons all discharged in unison. The combined firepower of 400 human warships struck the Endless Hunger's shields simultaneously. For 3 seconds the shields held. Energy barriers that had been designed by Krellian engineers over centuries of warfare absorbed terawatts of destructive power, dissipating the force across quantum fields and dimensional shunts. But human weapons kept firing and the shields had their limits. On the 4th second, the barriers collapsed. Jathic felt the impact through the deck plating as the first human weapon struck his ship's armor. Damage report. Multiple hull breaches across decks 7 through 23, Vorshan reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. We have lost primary communications and secondary weapons arrays. Casualties estimated at 40% of crew complement. The flagship shuddered again as another volley struck home. Systems failed across the ship, lights flickering as power conduits ruptured and backup generators struggled to compensate. Jathic looked at his tactical display and made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Signal the fleet. All ships, emergency retreat. Execute jump protocols immediately. Commander, we still have over 1,600 operational vessels. We can still win this battle. At what cost? Jathic turned to face his tactical officer. They have destroyed a fifth of our fleet in less than an hour. They have weapons we cannot defend against and tactics we did not anticipate. If we stay, we will lose more ships, more warriors, more credibility. He looked back at the tactical display, at the red icons that represented dead ships and dead crews. Signal retreat. Now. The order went out across the Krellian fleet. Ships that had been pressing their attack suddenly disengaged, their faster-than-light drives spinning up as they prepared to flee the system. The humans didn't let them go easily. Attack wings pursued the retreating Krellians, destroying another 43 vessels before they could jump to hyperspace. When the last Krellian ship vanished in a flash of distorted spacetime, a strange silence fell over the battlefield. Admiral Komu stood on the bridge of the Retribution and looked at the debris field that stretched across millions of kilometers. Human and Krellian ships alike floated among the rocks, their hulls broken, their crews dead. She had won, but the victory felt hollow. Casualty count, she said quietly. 41 ships destroyed, ma'am. 19,000 personnel confirmed killed in action. Another 12,000 wounded. The numbers hit her like physical blows. 19,000 people who had volunteered to defend their home, who had trained and prepared and hoped they would never have to fight. They had paid the ultimate price for humanity's survival. Broadcast a message to all human installations, Komu ordered. The Krellian fleet has been repelled. Earth is secure. We have won. She paused, then added softly, begin search and rescue operations for any survivors, human or Krellian. And contact Commander Ross. Tell her to return to the Galactic Assembly. We need to ensure this never happens again. The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within days, every civilized species knew that the Krellian Harvest Fleet had been defeated, driven from Sol System by a species that the Assembly had dismissed as primitive and helpless. The reaction was shock, disbelief, and in some cases, fear. A species barely 3 decades into galactic society had destroyed over 400 Krellian warships. What did that mean for the balance of power? What did that mean for the careful hierarchies and territories that had been established over millennia? Commander Elena Ross returned to Zenith Prime 3 weeks after the battle. This time she did not come alone. Behind her walked Admiral Komu in full dress uniform, flanked by honor guards carrying the flags of Earth's unified government. When Elena entered the assembly chamber, the delegates were already waiting. The atmosphere was different now. Where before there had been dismissive laughter and casual contempt, now there was careful attention and barely concealed nervousness. Chancellor Voretha's voice boomed through the chamber. The assembly recognizes Commander Elena Ross of Earth. You may speak. Elena walked to the central platform. She did not look small anymore. She looked like exactly what she was, the representative of a species that had proven itself capable of incredible violence when threatened. Honorable members of the Galactic Assembly, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. I stand before you today not to request protection, but to demand recognition. 3 weeks ago, you approved a territorial claim that would have resulted in the genocide of my species. You did so casually, as if the lives of 8 billion human beings meant nothing. You laughed when I asked for mercy. You dismissed our pleas for justice. She gestured, and holographic displays activated throughout the chamber, showing footage from the battle. Krellian ships burning. Human weapons firing. The moment when the endless hunger's shields failed and the flagship began to die. This is what happened when you made that choice. The Krellian Empire, which had destroyed 300 species over 15,000 years, came to our system expecting an easy harvest. They brought 2,000 warships. They brought weapons designed to crack planets. They brought absolute confidence in their superiority. She paused, letting the images speak for themselves. They left with less than 1,600 ships. We destroyed over 400 of their vessels. We killed tens of thousands of their warriors. We drove them from our system in defeat. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. On the highest tier, the Krellian delegation sat in stony silence, their scales pale with suppressed rage. Elena continued, her voice growing harder. You need to understand something about humanity. We are not a warlike species. We do not seek conflict. We came to this assembly hoping for friendship, for cooperation, for a place among the civilized worlds. But we are also not passive. We are not prey. We are survivors who have spent our entire existence fighting for every advantage, every resource, every day of life on a world that did not make survival easy. She looked directly at the Krellian delegation. High Commander Jathic told me that rights are earned through strength. Very well. We have demonstrated our strength. We have shown that attacking humanity carries a cost that even the mighty Krellian Empire is unwilling to pay. She turned back to address the full assembly. We demand immediate recognition of humanity's sovereign territory within the Sol system. We demand protected status under galactic law. We demand that any future territorial claims against our species be subject to the same standards applied to elder civilizations. And we demand a formal investigation into the Krellian Empire's practices of harvesting sentient species. Chancellor Voreth shifted uncomfortably. Commander Ross, the Assembly cannot simply overturn its previous decision without cause. Cannot or will not? Elena's voice was sharp. Let me be clear, Chancellor. Humanity does not need the Assembly's permission to exist. We have proven we can defend ourselves. But we would prefer to do so as members of galactic civilization rather than as isolated warriors. The choice is yours. You can recognize us as equals, or you can continue to treat us as primitives. But if you choose the latter, remember what happened to the last power that underestimated us. The chamber fell silent. Elena could see delegates conferring with each other, holographic displays flickering as they consulted advisors and reviewed data. Finally, one of the Etheron delegates rose, her translucent form glowing softly. I move for an emergency vote to grant humanity protected sovereign status and recognize Sol system as inviolate territory under galactic law. Seconded, came a voice from the Vexcari delegation. Chancellor Voreth looked around the chamber. The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor of granting protected status to humanity and recognizing their territorial sovereignty, activate your voting crystals. This time the response was very different. Blue lights appeared across the chamber as delegation after delegation voted in favor. Even species that had previously abstained or voted against humanity now supported the motion. The final count was overwhelming, 58 in favor, 0 against, 5 abstentions. The Krellian delegation had abstained, their silence speaking volumes. The motion is approved, Voreth announced. Humanity is hereby granted protected sovereign status. Sol system is recognized as human territory, inviolate under galactic law. Any future territorial claims against humanity will be subject to the same standards applied to elder species. He paused, then added, this session is concluded. Elena felt a wave of relief wash over her. They had done it. Humanity was safe at least for now. She turned to leave, but Jathic's voice stopped her. Commander Ross. The Krellian commander had descended from his tier and now stood before her. Up close, she could see the age in his eyes, the weariness of a warrior who had fought for too long. You were right, he said quietly. We made a mistake. Yes, you did. The Krellian Empire will honor the Assembly's decision. We will not trouble your species again. He hesitated, then continued, I have sent a message to my government recommending significant changes to our harvest protocols. What happened at Sol System has forced us to reconsider many things. Elena studied him carefully. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know. And because I want you to understand something. Jathic's yellow eyes met hers. We have harvested 300 species. All of them begged for mercy. All of them tried to negotiate. All of them ultimately surrendered. You are the first to fight back successfully. The first to make us pay such a price that we chose retreat over victory. He bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect among his people. You have changed the galaxy, Commander Ross. Whether for better or worse remains to be seen. He turned and walked away, his heavy footsteps echoing in the empty chamber. Elena watched him go, then looked up through the transparent dome at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, 8 billion people were safe. Children were playing, families were reuniting, and life was continuing. Earth had survived its first major test among the galactic powers, and humanity had proven that it deserved its place among the stars. Admiral Komu approached, her expression somber. "Commander, we have received final casualty reports from the battle. 19,247 confirmed dead. Another 15,000 wounded." Elena closed her eyes. "They saved our world." "Yes, ma'am, they did. Make sure their families know that. Make sure the entire species knows what they sacrificed." Elena opened her eyes and looked at Komu. "And make sure we never forget the cost of survival. We won this battle, Admiral, but there will be others. The galaxy is vast and full of dangers. We need to remain vigilant, remain strong, remain ready." "We will, Commander. Humanity has learned its lesson. We will never be caught unprepared again." The two women stood together, looking up at the stars, at the infinite possibilities and dangers they represented. Earth had shaken the stars with its fury, and the Galactic Assembly had learned to respect the newest members of their community. But Elena knew this was just the beginning. Humanity had claimed its place among the civilized species, but maintaining that place would require constant effort, constant vigilance, and constant willingness to defend what was theirs. Far away, on Earth, Director James Okafor sat in his office and looked at the reports from Project Sentinel. The secret fleet had performed beyond expectations, but the casualties had been severe. He thought about all the people who had worked on the project over the decades, who had built the ships and weapons in secret, who had believed that preparation for war was the price of peace. They had been proven right, and that knowledge brought no comfort. He opened a secure channel to Admiral Komu. "Director Okafor to Retribution. Komu here, Director. Admiral, I need you to begin Phase 2 of Project Sentinel. We need to expand the fleet, improve our weapons, strengthen our defenses. The Krellians won't be the last threat we face." "Understood, Director. What are our target numbers?" Okafor looked at the star map on his wall, at the vast expanse of the galaxy that humanity now had to navigate. "Double what we have now within 5 years. Triple it within 10. We need to ensure that Earth is never threatened again." "That's a massive undertaking, Director. The resources alone will be made available." The Assembly vote proved something important, Admiral. Power is the only language that matters in galactic politics. We must maintain our strength or we will lose our freedom. He paused, then added, "We fought for our right to exist. Now we must fight for our right to prosper. Begin the expansion, Admiral. Humanity's future depends on it." "Yes, Director." Komu out. As the communication ended, Okafor looked back at the stars. Humanity had won its first great victory among the galactic powers. They had proven their strength, earned their sovereignty, and secured their home. But he knew that this was only the beginning of a much longer journey. The stars held wonders and terrors beyond imagination, and humanity would face them all in time. But they would face them as they had faced the Krellians, united, determined, and absolutely unwilling to surrender. Earth's fury had shaken the stars, and the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The prey had become predators, and the hunters had learned to fear the hunted. In the grand sweep of galactic history, humanity had announced its arrival not with words or treaties, but with fire and blood and an iron will that would not bend. The age of human isolation was over. The age of humanity's ascension among the stars had begun.